Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Snuggles and Storytime. I'm so glad to see you today. My name is Amanda, and I can't wait to talk to you about our new story today. Today, our story is about something different, something that is very important, especially to people in the Black community. People who have black or brown skin. A long time ago, they were not treated very well in the United States of America. But there was this special day, it's called Emancipation Day, where they were freed because before that, they were made to do things that their boss wanted them to do, and he could take their kids, he could make them work really, really hard for a long, long time, and he didn't have to give them very much food or a nice place to live or anything like that. They were not treated well. So in the Black culture or the Black community, there is a day in June where they celebrate when the President of the United States said, nope, you can't have slaves anymore. All the people who were slaves or were forced to work for you are now free and they can do whatever they want. That special day is called Juneteenth, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I know, maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't, and that's okay. But it's part of what happens in the United States of America, so I wanted you to be aware of it, okay? So let's put our hands up and we're gonna sing hello first, and then we'll get to our stories. Ready? Here we go. Hello, all my friends, how are you? Hello, all my friends, how are you? With the jiggle, 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 and a wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Hello, all my friends, how are you? Now, have you ever heard of Juneteenth? Maybe, maybe not. Have you ever heard of someone being called a slave? A slave is somebody who is made to work for somebody else, and they don't have a choice about it. Like sometimes you might be asked to do a chore or help around the house by your mom or dad, but you are given a nice place to live and you're given food. You're not a slave. You don't have no rights. No rights. So a right is something that you get that makes you feel safe. Okay? Something different. So I've got two stories today, and it's going to teach us about Juneteenth and why people celebrate it. Okay? So our first one is called The Story of Juneteenth, and it's written by Dorena Williamson. Okay? It's a little book, so I'm going to hold it kind of close so you can see it better. The Story of Juneteenth. In June, we celebrate a special day of freedom called Juneteenth. Do you know why we celebrate? We're going to learn. We celebrate Juneteenth to remember the day when the last enslaved Africans in the United States became free. So we talked about slaves. That's people who were forced to work for other people. And do you see how their skin is brown? Some is darker, some is lighter. Most people who have brown skin like that come from a place called Africa, or they originated in a place called Africa, and then they might have moved a whole bunch of times. So this group of people is sometimes called the Black community, and they're very proud of who they are and how hard they work to get here, as they should be. So Juneteenth is when they celebrate when all the people who were forced to be slaves didn't have to anymore. They were then free. Long ago, the first enslaved Africans were brought to America. They had to work hard, and they were not paid. They had to do whatever they were told. And if they didn't want to, or they weren't working fast enough, sometimes the people who were the slave bosses were really, really mean to them. And they would yell at them, or they would even hurt them. Not okay, right? No, not okay. Many people in the northern states believed that slavery was wrong, or it was wrong to be the boss of somebody and not give them any choices. But landowners in the southern states didn't want the northern side states to tell them what to do, especially to end freedom and slavery. The North and South fought a war called the American Civil War. So the two sides were fighting. The people on North and the people on the South were fighting. And one of the things they fought about was slavery. President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and it said that enslaved people in the southern states would be free on January 1st, 1863. In January. So that was a president, and he decided, nope, no more slavery. You can't make people work and not pay them. On New Year's Eve in 1862, I'm sorry, I said my numbers wrong. Africans waited and watched. As the new year dawned, they rejoiced in their new freedom. They were excited because it's not easy to be a slave. It was really hard work. Would you want to do that? I wouldn't want to. But not all of the enslaved people were free right away. In Texas, far away from the nation's capital, the people didn't know that they were free. So they lived far, far away. Do you see these things? That's called cotton. Have you ever seen a cotton ball? It starts like this. Or a cotton shirt or dress. It starts like this. And they had to pick it from these sticks because it's a plant. And it's kind of prickly and it hurts. It's a tough job. And that's one of the jobs that people who were slaves had to do. Finally, 2 years later, Union General Gordon Grander, brought an army of 2,000 men to Galveston, Texas. Black soldiers called the U.S. Colored Troop came as well. So the soldiers are coming to this town. What do you think is going to happen? I don't know. Let's see. And on June 19th, 1865, an order was read all across the city. It said that all enslaved people were free, and this brought great joy to many newly free people. See how happy they are? They're hugging and they're smiling and dancing and shouting. I bet they were happy. I would be happy if I was one of them. Soon, African Americans started schools. Because when you were a slave, you couldn't go to school. You couldn't learn how to read or write from a teacher, things like that. Maybe your mom and dad could teach you if they weren't too tired after work, but they didn't get to go to school. They built churches and they even created jobs. They made progress towards equality. Equality is when you're treated kind of the same as somebody else. So if a little girl who happened to have black or brown skin wanted to go to school, then she should be able to, because a little girl who had peach or white colored skin, they could go to school. So that was equality. They wanted to be treated the same. Each year on June 19th, African Americans in Texas remember the day that ended slavery. They celebrate with parades and picnics, and other states began celebrating that day too, because it was important. And that would be something that the Black community would be very proud of. Wouldn't you? I would be. Today, Juneteenth is a national holiday. People around the country and around the world celebrate, and they remember the joy and the hope that freedom brings. The end. Juneteenth is a big deal. Did you know that it wasn't even a holiday until a couple of years ago? Yeah. A long time, people who had brown or black skin, they were just supposed to be grateful that they were free, and they weren't supposed to celebrate how hard they had to work to get there. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me either. So that's why the people in the Black community decided they would celebrate, to remember and not forget about all the struggles and all the excitement that happened when they were finally freed. Okay? Our next story today is called Juneteenth, Our Day of Freedom. And it's written by Sharon Denise Wyeth and illustrated by Kim Holt. It's a little bit longer book, but I bet we can handle it because we're smart people. Ready? Here we go. Juneteenth is a joyous holiday. It is also called Freedom Day. On that day, we celebrate the end of slavery in America. Juneteenth got its name from June 19th. On that day in 1865, Major General Gordon Granger entered the city of Galveston, Texas, with about 2,000 Union soldiers with him. Some of the soldiers belonged to the United States Colored Troop, also known as the USCT. Do you remember what the United States Colored Troop, what was different about them? They had black or brown skin, so their skin was different. Do you see anybody in that other troop? Yep, they're back there by the flag. Do you think they were made to be soldiers, or did they get a choice? Yes, you're right. They got a choice. They chose to be in the Army. The USCT soldiers were free African Americans. Some had made dangerous escapes from when they were enslaved. That's the only way that they could get safe. If they were having a big mean boss man, they had to sneak away, and it was really dangerous. They had joined the Union Army to fight for the freedom of their own people. That's pretty brave, isn't it? From April 1861 to April 1864, that's 4 years, 61, 62, 63, 64. America had been in war over slavery. It was called the Civil War. 11 states that allowed slavery had rebelled or were angry, and they said, no way, and left the Union. So the United States of America is called a union because it's a lot of different states that work together. But at that time, 11 of the states said, I don't like your rules. I'm going to leave and go be my own place. You can't tell me what to do. Does that work very well, you think? No way. Texas was one of them, but the rebel states had lost. So the rebel states are the people who said, I don't want to follow your rules. I want to do what I want to do. You can't make me stop having slaves. Even before the war ended, President Lincoln, there's that guy again, had signed an order called the Emancipation Proclamation. On January 1, 1863, he declared that all enslaved people in the rebel states were to be freed. So the president said, no more slaves. Do you think they're going to listen? Let's see. But 2 years later, in 1865, thousands of African Americans in Texas still weren't even told that they were free. Enslaved people did back-breaking work for no pay. Back-breaking work means really, really hard work. Oh, look, there's that cotton again that we talked about. That was a tough job. Slaveholders had selfishly kept the news of their freedom a secret. That's not nice, is it? They didn't want to lose all their workers that they didn't have to pay. But now General Granger had come to read Order Number 3. That's the letter that the president said. To proclaim their freedom, the soldiers would make sure that everyone followed the order. Granger's voice rang out, "All slaves are free!" The crowd grew excited. Enslaved people shouted for joy. When they discovered they could have been free 2 years earlier, many were stunned or surprised and angry. Why do you think they were angry? Yeah, because they weren't told. Would you be angry if your mom had a present for you and she didn't tell you? You might be. You might be. Some enslaved people tried to run away in the past, and if they were caught, they were harshly punished. So that was not good. As the good news spread, enslaved workers walked out of the fields. They could no longer be forced to plant and harvest crops for no pay at all. Enslaved servants, that's people who were workers, but instead of working in the fields, they worked in their houses. Enslaved servants left the large houses where the slaveholders forced them to cook and wash clothes and take care of the animals. Now, at last, they were free. Imagine how thankful they were. Some of them knelt in prayer. Imagine how glad and celebratory they were. Neighbors hugged and shared the good things that they had. There might even have been sweet strawberry drinks, cornbread with apple butter, or a pot of delicious stew. So they're having a party because they're celebrating. Thousands left their tiny slave cabins behind. Freedom meant they could set out and make new lives. They had very few belongings. Belongings are things that you own. But they had powerful dreams. Dreams that they could share as they walked. Dreams that they could share around campfires of Union soldiers who might take them in. Newly freed people wanted their own land. They dreamed of building houses and starting farms. Slaveholders had tried to prevent enslaved people from learning how to read and write. But now newly freed people had the chance to learn. They were eager for an education. They were really excited about going to school. Because when you can't do something, you get really excited when you finally can. Most of all, they wanted to work for wages. Wages is money that you're paid for working. They took their skills with them wherever they went. So here they're making bread, and here they're working with some wood. Field hands and cow hands, carpenters and blacksmiths, seamstresses and cooks could now be paid for their labors or for their work. That's a good thing. Not all free people in Texas left the state. Some became tenant farmers and servants for former slaveholders. So some people chose to stay there and keep working. Is that okay if that's their choice? It is. If it's their choice, it's okay. This was a hard life, too. The wages were not very high. They were low. But they were paid. Freed people often gave themselves new names for their new lives. Names of lost loved ones or places they had been born. Names from the Bible or even a poem. An African American name might have been passed down in secret even. People named themselves for the things that they believed in, like truth and freedom. Freedom made them hopeful, but they would not easily forget how badly they were treated in slavery. Many families had been separated and never saw each other again. June 19th became a day of remembrance in Texas. It was a day when the descendants of enslaved African Americans think about their ancestors, people who were forced to be slaves. And, like those who came before them, they celebrated freedom. In 1980, Texas made Juneteenth a state holiday. Juneteenth became celebrated in nearly every other state and the District of Columbia. In 2021, just a couple of years ago, Juneteenth was made a federal holiday. People lined the streets at Juneteenth parades to see brightly decorated floats and even marching bands. Why are they celebrating? Do you remember? Good job. They're celebrating to remember when the slaves were let go. They were let to be free. In Longview, Texas, there's a Juneteenth rodeo. On Juneteenth, you might play baseball. On Juneteenth, you might have a block party where everyone on the street is invited. We bring homemade salads and desserts to backyard barbecues. We enjoy red foods like watermelon, red velvet cake, and strawberry soda, a tradition of Juneteenth drink. Our elders tell stories of our ancestors and how they lived. We pass around family photos, and we might even draw a family tree to see who were our grandmas and grandpas and great-grandmas all the way back. Who were the moms and dads of our grandmas and grandpas too. We listen to the Emancipation Proclamation. We honor the leaders of the past, and we discussed ways to keep working for equality. Remember, that's when you treat people the same. We sing the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing is part of their song. I don't know what the Black National Anthem sounds like. Do you? That's something I want to ask my computer later so I can find out. Maybe you can ask your mom or dad to find out what the Black National Anthem is, because I don't know. We write essays about what freedom means to us. America was founded on the promise of freedom in the Declaration of Independence, signed in 1776. With the end of slavery in 1865, the country got one step closer to keeping that promise. Juneteenth is a celebration of freedom for all. The end. We learned a lot today about Juneteenth. It's important to remember that Juneteenth is a holiday where we celebrate and remember when the people who were slaves were made free. It means they didn't have to work for free anymore. They couldn't have other people just boss them around and not pay them. It's a big, important day, and I hope you celebrate it well. Maybe you'll go to a picnic, maybe a parade, maybe you'll have some strawberry soda like it said in the book. Whatever you choose to do, I hope you remember how much you're loved, and I hope you enjoy your freedom that our ancestors gave us. Until next time, bye-bye, my friends.